as approved, so.
Okay. So then we'd have to have it he'd have to have it assessed now, and then assessed when it's completed, and we can only grant TIF for that difference, correct?
So what we're going to do is that base year is the assessed value in the year prior to when you say we're going to divide the taxes. So he's going to do the work, finish the work going into 2020, and so we file with the state, the Division of Taxes, the notice to divide. And 2020 is going to be that base value year. So the assessment as of January 1, 2020 is going to be that base value year. Then starting in 2021, moving forward, any increase from that base value is going to be what you get the TIF off of.
Okay.
Were you going to read something, Rob?
Yeah, here's what it says. The redevelopment project would not occur in the community redevelopment area without the use of tax increment financing. They're not talking about half the project, they're talking about the project. This project is done, basically. They've advertised it, we've got rooms to rent. It's a done project. How can you say it won't occur?
So the apartments are done, is what you're saying? So somebody can move into an apartment right now with no cabinets, no flooring, no plumbing,
I don't
none
know.
of that?
All I read is
I'll rent one to you.
these
If you would want to
ads
rent one
people
like that, I'd rent one to you, Rod.
Huh?
If you want to rent an apartment like that, I'd rent one to you.
Well, I
I
think
don't think anybody else would want to do that.
I think obviously this, you know, this, we've not had anything like this before.
Yeah, we haven't
So
had
it-
something like this brought
so
to us,
do we set
being honest.
precedent in doing something like this? I think that opens up, you know, we better be prepared for that. And it's unfortunate that, you know, a project gets going and you get halfway through or three-quarters of the way through and you know, there's bumps in the road, but, you know, the CRA and TIF, I'm not so sure how much of a gap financing mechanism that can be, you can, you know, hang your hat on. So, you know, I don't know. Those are contingencies I think that you have to account for and plan for at the beginning of the project. You talked about structural engineer or your architects and stuff like that. There was no, at the beginning of this, there was no indication of,
No, we
or
tried.
was that done?
No, and that's.
There was no structural engineering pieces done ahead of time?
We had inspections done, but the problem is a lot of it couldn't be seen. So like, for example, when they had an issue there, what they would do rather than spend the money to fix it correctly, they would cover it up. So, I mean, unless an inspector was gonna tear out, you know, drywall from 8-foot ceiling that was dropped,
Sure.
you know, which nobody
Yeah.
does that. I mean, I do construction, you know, for a living. I own other apartment complexes. You know, this isn't my first time doing it, and it's.
I mean, the project is great, you know, the idea, the
One of the best
project.
projects we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I wish you would've
hopefully,
been here
I know
before
you're
you-
probably feeling like you're getting arrows
Yeah.
thrown at you.
No, I understand.
I think the project is very nice and what I've seen, I haven't been inside. It's an unfortunate situation that you're in. I just don't know if, you know, CRA is,
If
you
we
know,
can.
the right.
Let me interject real quick, because I think what we're trying to get across, the but-for clause, we have one attorney says you can't, and one says we can.
That's why I hired an attorney that specializes in this, because it costs me money to hire an attorney. I don't have a lot of money right now. I put money in this project. The reason I hired this attorney, this is the guy that does this all day, every day. He specializes in this. We had this conversation, does it qualify for the but-for? And his answer is, yes, it does. If I thought it did.
I can see his perspective, too,
I
to be honest
wouldn't
with you.
come to you guys. wouldn't do it
I
all the
can
time.
see that if the project from what you've done, the initial project is complete, then what you're asking for is a different project. It's not the same project, because if you don't plan on finishing the final 8 apartments because the funds are not available, then the second, it would be a separate project.
Dan, and I'm following you too, where a new application for the remaining rather than us seeing the whole picture? Does that make sense?
Now,
Does it make
the
sense?
important piece is,
Okay.
it's difficult to divide an existing piece of property though, right? Because we've got to be able to capture the TIF off of the entire piece of the real estate. And so,
You have to.
again, right.
But it's gonna be, you said it'd be reassessed
Yeah,
after the first of the year, and so you'd only capture the TIF. I
We
wouldn't
would
think you'd capture
still-
very much TIF. I mean, I would think it'd be reassessed, and there wouldn't be a lot to capture anyway.
Sure. I get and agree with your perspective there. I think it's just a matter of semantics at this point as far as, okay, do we have another project or is this an extended scope of this project? At the end of the day, he's being faced with something that was more than what he set out to undertake. And so now, when you look at the piece of real estate, we do have to look at the entire piece of real estate. I can't go to the assessor and say, give me an assessment for 10 of these and then 8 of these. They're not going to split it up for you like that. Does that make sense?
I understand what happened here, but the original project was to develop 18 units. So do we really have a new project?
Just to give you guys an idea, and I apologize, a lot of the pictures on my iCloud got deleted, but these are some of the things. There was somebody living in this apartment right there. So there was plywood on top of those floor joists. There was carpet there. Somebody lived in that apartment. The guy works at JB's. I'm not gonna tell you his name, but he lived in this apartment. And you'll see what we had to do to that apartment. We had to take out all the floor joists, put in steel beams. Below the steel beams is new footings. Rebuild all the walls, all the structural walls, all the support walls. So when we bought it, somebody lived in that apartment, so you would think that apartment is livable.
The only concern I have is I started talking about the but-for clause. We don't write the laws, we're just supposed to follow them. Based on what he read and your application, as much as I like this project, this is one of the better projects we would have seen. I don't see how we get past the but-for clause. I don't.
What was the,
I don't see how you.
what was the rationale, or what was the rationale, or was there any thought of, at the beginning of the project, did you have, when you started the project in the early inception phases, who were you talking with? PCDC?
Talked to PCDC, I met with Rod as well.
Wait,
Okay, but let me just get to the, so my question is why wasn't there a TIF application at the very beginning of the project?
Yep, I understand where you're coming from with that. So the main reason is we thought we could do it without TIF. We didn't realize we were gonna run into so much. I mean, the thought did cross my mind, so, and I know Rod wants to chime in here, so I did go into his office twice, I believe.
I got the dates and everything here. If
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not- I'm not
At that
on
point,
trial.
we
I
didn't
got-
figure that.
I have it documented.
So you just felt like you had.
Probably didn't need the TIF, like we could do it without it. That was our intention.
Okay.
I've done multiple projects, Kearney here, Lawton Holders, we've never applied for TIF, we've never applied for any financing. We just are at a point now to where we don't have an option. It's.
And so 100,000, if you're at your, where you're kind of, you're at your max
Yep,
on this deal. My question that I asked you early on was, what's it gonna take to get the project complete?
yep.
If I understand everything correctly, it's 100,000.
No, that's, and I apologize, that's the way it's laid out in here, that's not.
Well, I'm just, that's just an assumption,
No.
don't apologize, I'm just
No.
asking the question, but I'm also assuming that if you're asking for 100,000 in TIF funding, you're gonna go back
We
to
also
your
have
bank.
the
and get a-
92.5 from PCDC once everything's completed, so that's what we need. We would need the balance of the TIF plus the funding from.
So 192-ish.
Roughly, yes.
Adams is not providing any more funds.
You're correct. And I did-
Outside of they're gonna provide
The bond.
the
I
bond.
applied
apparently.
for funds with them. I was sent a letter that stated why I would not receive any more funds. And I've had a relationship with that bank for about 12 years.
So they've got that, but you're saying that they would do the bond financing on it?
Correct.
Again, that's easier for a bank to do, right? Because it's secured against promised revenue, essentially, from the tax payments off the property. So it's much more palatable for a banker than, obviously, a deed of trust against a piece of real estate. So, and kind of, I'm sure we have bankers in here, and that's the last thing I want to do is try to school banker. Excuse me. But to go back to your point on, okay, how do we have the two different
There's just one real banker
projects? I have two on my board, and there's
Silly.
Well, we got three.
So, there you go. So the thing is I guess if you take a step back and look at it this way and say, okay, my first house I bought at foreclosure, right? So before I bought it, I said I'm going to put this much money into it. This is what it's going to take to do it, okay? Got into it, didn't have any issues, and put that money into it. If I would have gotten in there and realized we had a bunch of underlying issues, then I'm faced with additional costs. Now, if you ask me after that, okay, what was included in your project? Obviously, in that first project, I wouldn't have included these extra costs that I didn't foresee, right? So that, again, I know that there's a difference of opinion here, but again, this is what we do on a daily, weekly basis in my firm. At the end of the day, that project is fundamentally different because the underlying costs associated with it that were not foreseen have changed.
I know what everybody's question is the but for. We have two different opinions at this point. Am I correct?
I'd say yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, no question about that.
Where do we go from here to get another opinion?
How many opinions do you want?
But Dan, this is my opinion, and I'd like you guys to interject. I've heard a couple of you say this is a great project, but we can't get past the but for, okay? So we either have to get past the but for to continue this project, or we
Well,
don't, okay?
But the other thing, though, is that the project is, I mean, they've got 10 units that are rented. I mean, apparently that's gonna cash flow and.
Takes 12 to break us even.
Well, then, I think that, that your bank probably better, I assume they figured that out, that if it takes 12, I mean, that's some of the pro forma, that's some of the projections, there's gonna be cost overruns in any construction scenario. So I'm not so sure how this problem has become the Holder's CRA problem. And
My question is, if you guys would have approved it before there was overruns, what's the difference between 6 months ago and now? I mean, if it was a good project then, it's a good project now. It would have gotten TIF financing.
Hey, Chance, I'll explain that as the chairman of the CRA.
Right.
When you look at your project, when we look at projects to start, there is to be nothing done until the TIF is approved. Nothing, no demolition, no nothing. So that's where we look at the projects.
Why don't you explain why there's not, the reason there's not
The
supposed.
reason is because of our statutes and the laws. That's where we're at with the but for.
Sure.
So we look at each project and say, but for TIF, but if this project would not get TIF, would it go on? And that is one of our statutes that we have to follow. So I mean, we're not drilling you for it, but
No, I understand.
great, like they said, great project. But we have to get past that but for. And I guess I have to ask the rest of the board, do you want another opinion? We have two opinions here. And
I
can you,
don't think we need another opinion, but,
okay, can you get past the but for?
well, I look at it from the standpoint of, I understand there's some wiggle room and after a project has been started, but you've spent 75% of the total projected cost. So, we're a long ways past the beginning at this point. And I want to say thank you. I mean, I work downtown. This is great for downtown. I agree with what everybody else said. This is an awesome project, and I'm glad that PCDC is supporting it. And I want to help support it in any way we can. But total construction cost about $33,000 per unit. That's not unreasonable. I would hope maybe your bank will work with you on that. That's a pretty reasonable total cost to have in an apartment unit, and not an eye-popping number by any means. So for me, maybe if this was earlier in the process, it'd be easier. But what we're going to say that the TIF proceeds are going towards at this stage, that's kind of hard when it's already 75% of the total cost has been put into it. But thank you for investing in downtown Holdridge.
Dan?
Appreciate it, thank you.
Steve?
Well, I certainly agree with what's been said. It is a good project. And it's one you'd like to support, but having said that, this could open a can of worms that we'd have to live with for a long, long time. And it is in violation of not necessarily statute, but in the policies, the way we've approved projects in the past.
If I could get around that but for it, I would approve this project in a minute, but I just don't know how we get across that.
Well, I guess the question I would pose then is, when do we, okay, so if he doesn't move forward with this, can't get the project done. If we're not talking about a change project right now, when does it become that point? When does somebody get to come in and apply for those and say this is a new project for these next 8 units? Because again, he's at a point where he can't move forward with it.
So I mean, I struggle with that, is that the saving grace in this project is CRA.
I do want to comment on that as far as, because it was mentioned, is this a CRA problem? Remember, this is ultimately to go back to reinvest in your community. What you're doing by creating value in these additional 8 properties is expanding your tax base, right? So I don't view it necessarily as a CRA problem necessarily. But yes, there is the point, as is with any TIF project, that without these funds, I can't move forward with that piece. And so it would be a saving grace.
Just to give you an example, and I'd be happy to provide the exact documentation, the 6 of the 8 people that are renting apartments so far are people that live and work out of town. The guy that moved in today, maybe it was Monday, Dustin Schroeder, he has been living in Shelton, working at the hospital, driving back and forth from Shelton for over a year now. Received partially a grant from TCDC to pay his down payment and his rent. So 6 out of 8 people were living outside of Holdridge, now live here, are going to spend money here, invest here, increase the tax base here. So it's not, it's really, you guys know what the housing is needed. That's not a question.
So for you to get the PCDC grant of $92,000, you have to be 100%.
It's 92 up to 165, am I right, is what I just read?
92.5, I think, is the number, and it's predicated on the number of units that he completes. That's coming out of our Go Dream program that supports renovation of downtown structures to create new living units.
I've done other projects here in town. I did 703 Sherman last year through the Go program. Didn't apply for any TIF financing, didn't apply for any kind of subsidizing. I usually don't, but now we're in a situation where I have no choice. The reason you've never seen me in here before is I do projects, I fund them, my bank funds them. I don't have that issue. This is not that project. If we do not get CRA help and PCDC help, we will have, like I said, still 10 units, it's not an issue, but we'll have 8 units not completed. That's eight apartments that, you know, are desperately needed in Holdridge for all the new jobs at BD and Allman Brothers and all these other things. And we can rent them, 100% we will rent those apartments if they are completed. We have people that want to rent them.
As a board, do you want to vote on this tonight, or
Can
do
we
you?
issue partial? I mean, what?
Or do you want to table this and find out some more information and go over these documents? I would not be opposed, myself, as the chairman, is talking to some of the city council members and get some of their views on it. I mean, once it gets past us, it has to be approved by them.
Good point.
And if we don't have any support from the city council, but we could table this for tonight.
You got 3 of them right there.
Chance, you understand we just got this information last Wednesday, and most of us didn't get to look at it till today
Yeah.
with over the weekend.
I understand.
I think it would give us a little more time. I'm sure you're on a time crunch. Everybody's always on a time crunch, but that would give us some more time to look at this, maybe visit with our city council members and see if we can go anywhere with this. And get a little more information on, can we get past that but for?
Yeah.
Rather than doing a vote on it tonight.
Is it impossible to move it along to the planning commission
I-
and still have those conversations? Again, there's no commitment,
Colton?
the but-for doesn't come in until down the road.
My opinion is, why should we move this to the planning commission without some more questions answered by our board? I guess you guys can interject if you disagree with me. I'd say we don't vote on it tonight, we get a little more information, and we can talk about it our next meeting. And Ron Tillery,
Quick question.
yes?
And I don't know if this would resolve any of your concern about this or not, but Colton, are there examples elsewhere around the state where a community has
Yeah,
advanced a
that's a good-
project
That
like
is a
this?
good question.
that is a good question, thank you, Ron.
Sure. We do it in various different locations. This would be the first for me for a project apartment style like this. I would defer to Mike, who has over 300
Okay.
TIF projects under his belt. We can forward along.
Can you find
that
out
information.
some
Absolutely.
information like that for us? That would be good.
Yep.
I don't want to be the one that holds, I mean, I'd like to see the additional 8 rental units as well. But I don't want to break, you know.
Colton, you're here representing your attorney, but you can also, you say you sit on the CRA in your community, you can understand our concerns.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, this is a community
Yeah,
process,
it
right?
is. Mhm.
And that's, as we talked about, planning commission, city council, CRA, this is part of the process, so. And we're willing to work through it and see if we can overcome some of those obstacles.
I'd like to visit with, I would myself like to visit with some of the city council members and see if we can find out if there has been any other projects in the state that have been done like it, you know, after they've gotten into it. Any opinions?
Would anybody like a tour of the project?
I'd love to come see him. I would.
I'll leave my phone number and
Okay.
I can show you around. And
Yeah.
Well, email
Yeah.
me when you're going.
Okay,
I'll run
okay.
down, go with.
So, do we need a motion to not act?
You need a motion to table.
Okay. Is there a motion to table adopting the resolution?
Actually, you're on number 5.
Yeah.
So we'll just stop it there, and that's
Oh.
accepting the application.
Okay. So is there a motion to table the acceptance of the application for the Iron Horse Flats?
Someone,
Is there a second? There's a motion by Dan, second by Kyle. Roll call.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep, nice meeting you. Thank you. No, actually, I'll leave it.
Diaz?
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That's wrong, so you don't.
Yes.
No, certainly not.
That way you can get my last name down.
All righty.
Thanks, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Steve? Yes or no? Table. Jared?
Yes.
Kyle?
Yes.
Dan?
yes,
And then, as a matter of record, on the last project, there was some confusion because we voted the same, I guess we considered the same vote for agenda items 2 and 4. One was to accept the application for TIF, and the other was to adopt CRA Resolution 2019-04. So I wrote down the vote for accepting the application for the tax increment financing. And then Rod looked at me and said, is that for the CRA? And I said, for the resolution, and I said, yes. Well, we actually did not vote on the resolution portion of that. So we need to step back to agenda item number 4.
What is the resolution doing
It
versus?
just sends it to the planning commission. The first step is
Our
that you
first step was
accept,
reviewing and talking about it.
and you accept the TIF application, and then the next one is to send it to the
I'll
planning.
make a motion to adopt CRA Resolution 2019-04.
Perfect.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Jared, second by Steve, roll call.
Kyle?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Diet?
Yes?
Steve?
Yes.
And Jerry.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Thanks, Dane. Keep us in mind.
I wanted to get it right.
So we're going to, we've already kind of reviewed the Iron Horse Flats redevelopment plan, but we're going to not adopt the resolution as we have tabled talking about this. So we're moving through 6 and 7, and we're moving to item 8, discussion of plan of action for the redevelopment of properties on the west side of East Street from 9th to 11th Avenue. Should they become available for redevelopment? Did you get the,
This.
that's this.
I did not get that.
And that item is, yeah, I grabbed that packet up there, Dan, it's in there. So, if they choose to do a gap paving project on the west side of Crew subdivision, the assessments will be made to the properties on both sides. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but if the assessments are more than the values of some of these properties, the property owners may just give them up. So I just put this on here for you to talk about whether that would be a project that you might want to undertake or not. Maybe you're not ready to do that as a CRA yet.
Sorry, Dane, can you say that again? I'm not sure I follow you.
If the assessments for paving to these properties on the west side of East Street are greater than the values, than the assessed values of the properties, the owners may want to just give properties to the
Wash their
city or
hands.
sell them. And it would just be an opportunity, I think anyway, for the CRA, if you want to be more proactive and aggressive, to take those properties and redevelop them.
So if we
Take them.
wanted to do that, what would we need to do?
Well, I don't know, that's for you to discuss.
You mean take that, when you say take them, you mean
You would end
get
up.
ownership?
You
We-
would get
CRA would,
ownership of them.
In some of these the 2 workshops that we've had, we've talked about, we've not talked about, but we've heard about other projects like this. And as a CRA, this would be a good project for us if we wanted to look at this. Dane and I kind of talked, and it hasn't been approved to get paved that yet, has it?
No.
Doug?
No.
Not yet? But there's a possibility of it.
We've talked about it.
Yeah,
Probability.
probability. So, and like Dane,
who owns those?
it's on
That's
every
connected
page
to the
there.
bound. If you-
Yeah.
Two
So
of
this-
those, Jim Sell, 2 of those, Nancy has crap.
Mhm.
Nancy's would not be owner occupied. What's the other one?
Jim Sell?
Jim Sell has 2 of the properties.
And the rentals?
Yeah, they're all rentals.
And there's a vacant lot there too, owned by Osprey.
Yeah, the north end has been for sale for some time, but
What would you guys like to see our involvement be on something like that?
Buy it.
Buy it.
Buy it.
We don't have any money.
We're working at it.
There's the man to talk to, the money man's right over there.
See if those property owners want to be done.
What's that?
See if those property owners want to be done. Might
Don't
be-
you have to gap pave it and assess it first?
I think we could do it either way. We could do it before or after,
Okay,
but that's been my
What
understanding.
was your first comment?
My first comment,
Yeah.
let's see if those property owners are ready to be done.
that'd be hard to go to property owners as a CRA and say, are you ready to give up your property?
Well, I don't mean give up. We're not stomping on anybody
Oh.
here. They should be
There's a willing
compensated.
seller
Yeah.
Yeah.
on the one that has 2 lots there. And the properties, I would question the assessed value of them.
Yeah. Yeah. This.
Yeah.
Right.
They basically all need to be leveled and just redeveloped.
Those are deep lots.
Mhm.
The guy wanted to put duplexes or apartments there, really dress up that with the Mesner PCDC project on the east side. It was 10 acres, gonna have some homes that would really, that area of Holdridge has been neglected, substandard streets, substandard housing.
So what would we have into, what would we have into it, estimated potentiality? The CRA, I mean, for one lot, would we have 25,000 into it?
I wouldn't pay that much for them, because you're gonna have to.
I don't know what the cost per foot for paving would be, but demo's gonna be,
Was
So
the
there's
city here to demo
two,
for us?
there's 2 residents on,
There's 4.
There's 4 rentals.
there's
rentals.
4, they're all,
Yeah.
there's okay.
Uh-huh.
Didn't you get an estimate on
What is the estimate on the paving?
paving?
I haven't got that from Kim yet. He was
Okay.
supposed to work that up so much a foot.
I thought you.
You had a general number, but I
Okay,
can't pull up.
$10,000 to tear down a house and haul it off.
I seem to
That'd be about
remember
right.
200.
But
the city tore down the tower line.
Blocks.
But they
Did
could
they
do
I
it
sell?
was thinking it was
And
probably 3.
and I think that was
I think
overestimated
they did.
at that
City
time.
crews did it all themselves.
Maybe it
Yeah.
come like Dustin Street did.
When you tear down a property,
At one time,
You-
wasn't it like 40,000?
you have to first have an
bucks per
asbestos
property?
inspection,
No, I don't
and then
think
you
it
have
was
to have an
that much.
asbestos removal, and you have to have an asbestos reinspection, then you gotta bring in the demolition crew.
What if the Holdridge Volunteer Fire Department just had a little project and
Well,
practiced?
we had one sit vacant for about 4 years that they were gonna burn down, but they never got to it.
So
You still have to do the asbestos work.
What you do?
this is all under the assumption that the property owners would be willing to
So,
sell, right? And is there I mean, what are they expect?
Once they're
Well, we
set,
can
once
force
the,
pave it, we can gap pave it, and assess all the property owners.
So then once you assess
That's
it,
typically
then
what you do.
that basically puts them into the.
Motivation.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the city won't get any money out of those assessments. They're going to give you the properties.
They'll be assessed to those properties on the east side owned by PCDC, and the west side owned by the 2 property owners.
And if the 2 property owners won't pay them, and they turn, is that what you're saying it might
And they
happen?
turn it back over to the city instead of paying the assessment.
I think there's a
Okay.
better way to go about that, though.
Okay,
And I think if they intended to hold on to their properties, they would pay the assessments. I don't know that either one of them would let it come to, let the properties get taken due to unpaid assessments. And certainly from the city side, we do not want to do that. I was kind of hoping Ron would go do some negotiating and see about picking those up, maybe between you guys and Ron. No pressure, Fred.
well, they're,
Listen,
There's no value
PCDC
there.
would like to be a partner with the CRA to do redevelopment. This is maybe one of the more impactful redevelopment projects you can take on, because it just sort of sets the stage to move on further south.
if I were on your board, I don't see how you make an offer on that real estate that, once those,
We wouldn't want to make it, we don't want to buy that property, but if we can assist the the CRA to buy the property, or if there are other people that can assist the CRA to buy that property, we would like to see that happen.
Sked might be a partner.
Could we buy it for
We're just kind of
the,
throwing it out there to get some ideas of.
could we buy it for the assessed value?
Area.
If they vacate the property, we could buy it for the assessments against the property, right?
You may be 3-4 years away to getting that property bought.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen overnight, no matter what.
And you're kind of just
Yeah.
shuffling money around anyways, I mean,
Cause where would we
you're not
get-
really getting
where
the
would-
assessment, the
where
city's
would
not
we
really
get
getting the
money?
assessment.
You'd have to ask the council for it.
I mean, we'd have to get it from, yeah. Oh, I mean, I agree,
It's a,
it's what we've talked
It's
about.
what we've talked
or
about.
what we've heard in
It's
some
the
of
it's the perfect property to
it's
try
not gonna
on.
happen overnight, but it's out there, it's on the table, and we're gonna continue to talk
It's
about
just
it.
something to get you guys thinking about.
Yeah.
I think,
Thank
more
you
or
very
less.
much.
Nancy Ashcraft's gonna fight you though, isn't she?
It might be a good first, you know, action or foray into new areas. So it would be, might be a good place to start.
And we made you sit through a 2-hour meeting to pitch it to us.
Oh, I
Huh?
No, that's just a bonus, but
She's the one that had a fight.
Clean out.
Yeah, and we've done that in the past as far as some of the.
I mean, how can she put up a fight?
I'm not sure who asked the question, but I think we factored in for the 3 lots that PCDC will control on the east side of East Street. We factored in $40,000 for all 3 lots. That's essentially 1 block.
Assessed,
what you'd have.
Assessed.
Assessments.
Oh.
Now, it may or may not be that much, or it may be more, but that's what we're,
and that was 1 block,
yeah.
around 40?
One side of 1 block.
Okay,
10 to 11.
so, and this is 1 block or 2?
This should be 1 block, but this should be a longer block than Ron's.
Yeah.
Just
By the way, this is some materials I prepared for the city council last time that shows the parcels that we'll control. They're color coded in there. You've seen this already, but.
Thank you. That's some of that.
Yeah. And it also shows the schematics for a potential townhouse structure that is planned for the Messner subdivision. Can I'll give this to you there.
Doug just pointed out also on your side, the trailer court will have part of the assessment too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because they're on toward the south, so
And I wanna
Would you
make a
guess
trip
it
out
to-
Colorado to talk to those folks.
see if something can happen
Yeah.
there.
Doug, would you guess it to be about the same for both sides?
What's that?
Would you guess it to be about the same for both sides?
The west side would be just a little bit longer
Okay,
than PCDC.
Because like I say, the trailer court's on the east side, so they'll have some assessment too, so.
okay,
And that'll affect the trailer court, which is going to impact their operation, but they're gonna clean up those 2 blocks from 9th to 11th.
do you want any more discussion on this? I mean, we've got it out there, it's,
Say we're honest.
looks like
Excited about that.
a great project, and I think we can continue to talk about this.
Like I say, kind of gives you a little something to chew on
Yes.
anyway, so.
We don't have nothing else to chew
I've
on.
got a mouthful right now, but
Yeah.
We're-
Enjoy that steak.
If the public don't like what the city council does, they don't have to elect me next time.
We're gonna move on to item number 9, consider a regular scheduled date and time for meetings for the CRA. You know, now we just kind of go by if we have projects come, if we don't. Well, if we want to be more active, proactive CRA, we have talked about a monthly meeting, and then we don't have to see when everybody's available. And then we can talk about some of these things more often. Does that?
And yet, you'd
Yes.
also get a packet in a more timely fashion.
And we'd get a packet in a more timely fashion. Thank you very much, Dane. So is there,
Well, yeah, I mean,
think
If we're gonna be a viable board, and if I'm gonna continue to be on the board, we've gotta be engaged. And I don't care if we have, in my opinion, if we don't have a project for the next 4 months, we still need to meet, and we still need to have, I think, conversation of what our overall strategic plan is. And I'd like to continue to get updated on where we're at as a board. I mean, what's the percentage of, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, we've got X percentage of, blighted area, and
where we
here's
at?
how much that we have left remaining, and what do we strategically want to look at and do with those and potentially see in those areas. I mean, does that make sense as a board?
Yes, and if we're gonna be a more proactive board, and we're gonna need some type of a budget, which we have a budget right now, but, I mean, I think the city council
So,
knows.
There's been times we haven't met for
A year.
a year,
Yeah.
maybe
Or-
even longer.
It's about 3 years, couple.
I was gonna say,
It's about
there's
3 years.
2 or 3 years that we didn't have
2015 to
we didn't have
2018 or
anything.
something like that.
I don't mind meeting monthly as long as there's something on an agenda for us to meet about. But if there's nothing on an agenda to discuss, there's no reason to,
Sure.
because I'm assuming we'd have to have Rod come to these meetings, so we're gonna run up legal costs to have a meeting with an agenda that's pretty non-existent.
But I think
There's really no point in that.
But I think with what the city council is bringing towards us and what, we've done a couple workshops, I think there's things, at least, I'm gonna say through this next year, that we can have a monthly meeting. Because we need to get updated on our, the redevelopment plan. We need to look a little bit more into this. We gotta talk about budget. We also need to consider election of a vice chair. I know we have one CRA member that is going to be going off this December, and we're looking for a new CRA member. Mayor Young has come to me and said that we have to look for a new member. So I think there's a lot for us to talk about if we want, Dan, I agree with you. I don't want to have a meeting if we don't have to talk
I
about
think
it.
you could always cancel if we truly didn't have anything to talk
Absolutely,
about.
yes, yeah.
Can we do that, Dane?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mondays or Thursdays work best for me, but
And with you being on the board, I think that's what we need to consider, honestly. I think Monday's a good day because it's right before the city council on Tuesdays.
Mondays are good for me too. My other board
Mondays
meetings
are
are
probably
typically Thursdays.
Best for me.
Wow.
It's easy.
So Doug, you need to find somebody that Mondays are good for, okay?
First question.
Do you want to, when is the city council meetings? The first and, or second,
First and third Tuesdays at 6.
first and third Tuesdays? Are you guys willing to go the first Monday of the month, or do you want to go to that second? It does not matter to me.
Jared,
Ron, doesn't PCDC meet second? And
second.
you'd probably like
Okay.
to come to the meetings too?
Yeah, so that's out.
So first Monday?
Or we can go the third Monday. Dan?
first is fine with me.
First, I'll find it.
First Monday of the month. Do we need a motion for that date?
Yeah, let's do, and what time? Is this 5:15?
I'm okay with the 5:15 if everybody else is. I don't like the 5 o'clock, okay?
Perfect.
So moved.
Along with
Second.
that, planning commission meets on the second Thursdays, right, Dane?
Yes.
So that would be after we have met, yeah, okay?
Just for your information.
Thank you. 5:15 PM, first Monday of the month. There's been a motion by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jared. Roll call.
Yep. Deette,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Kyle,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes. So let me ask, does Deette have the authority, if she looks at an agenda and there's a blank sheet of paper, does she have authority just to cancel it?
She needs to let me know too, but
Oh, yeah.
So I think that, I mean, you're gonna have input on the agenda, correct?
Yeah, Dana and I will
Between
have
you
to,
guys.
yes.
And so, I mean, quite honestly, I think some of that, for like Diet's saying, some of that first stuff really needs to be I mean, there needs to be some re-educational pieces to, I'd like, go through that booklet that PCDC put out a year or so ago for us, or 6 months ago. I mean,
I have it right
all
here.
the projects that we've done, and, I mean, I just think we
I
need to
keep it with
really
me a
get
lot.
reacclimated with
Yeah.
what CRA has done in the past, and then where we're at right now with the percentage of ground that we have left, and really try to move forward on a plan as to what potentially that looks like. I mean,
Can we get some of that information by our next meeting, Dane?
sure.
Where we're at with, what percentage of, okay? Also, I've had a couple of the members, and maybe you have that with you, ask when their terms are up.
I don't have that with me.
Can you
Sorry.
provide that next time?
It's on your website.
Yeah,
and-
if it's correct.
And I think our budget, Dane, you sent me that information, I forwarded along to everybody. I think our budget's set at 25,000 a year, is that correct?
Well, they put in whatever you need.
That's all they do.
But
So,
that's all they do.
So do we need to, as a CRA, do we need to go to the city council and ask?
That's a
kind
good
of-
question.
That's something, I guess, that, I know the library comes to you and asks for their budget, and the police department, what I'm
It probably
saying?
wouldn't hurt to come before us.
One of the things you're gonna wanna discuss, that we've talked about before, is setting a fee schedule.
Yes.
And those fees are your monies to keep,
Mhm.
and they don't
Mhm.
go to the general budget, they go to the CRA.
And you sent me something, I have not looked at it from Ogallala, right?
Ogallala and probably Scotts Bluff was the fee schedule. I don't know
Yeah.
if I sent that
They
to
have
you.
fee schedules where if somebody wants to bring a TIF application, it costs them. And that's gonna go into the CRA budget to be able to buy that land.
I think that's a no-brainer right there.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had people that
Okay.
ran up his legal expenses and then didn't follow through on the project, and we
I mean, one of the communities
Mm-hmm.
that, was it the Omaha guy or somebody here recently, it was like $1,000. I don't know,
Mhm.
anywhere from
You're correct.
$500 to $1,000. So that, plus the application, I mean, Ron's provided through Ogallala and the checklist, but then the actual application, I mean, Rod historically has had the application, and then we're seeing applications from that, other applicants are
Right.
creating. Do we have a standard application form? And then when somebody
Yeah, we
has
do. The one I've been using.
well, I know, but then when somebody else, like these applications. are
Prepares an
more-
application differently.
Yeah.
It's a little different. So
Yeah.
I think there needs to be conversation and discussion as to how that looks. And then beyond that, it's the, I lost my train of thought.
I went to the city council meeting, the last meeting, and they were considering a resolution, and I emailed everybody, and you all gave me your input, kind of. So that resolution was passed, okay? So, and I got up and spoke and told them, what we are trying to do and what we're going to work towards, and I appreciate you guys coming tonight, I really do. And like I just said to Doug, maybe we need to go to them with a budget, but I also talked to them about that 10% that the city is keeping, that could 5% go to the city and 5% go to the CRA.
And they said, sure.
They said that's something we can talk about. That's what they said, Dan, so
And then
that
who-
could have been a sure.
And then who is the gatekeeper of the application? So if somebody comes in, he just pointed to you and you just pointed to him. So,
Oh, no, he has the application form.
and that who is, so if somebody applies, is it like I'm gonna use Jared instead of Steve. Is it like when somebody comes into Jared and wants a loan, you know, you writing on a piece of paper, that's a loan application. You kind of got to get that regulatory based. Or is it somebody, whoever that gatekeeper of the application is, are we, you know, just looking at that and saying, well, I don't think this will be a good project. I mean, I know that you've tried to make sure that it's a viable deal, not waste the CRA's time, but at the same point, we probably need to be aware of every applicant or every viable applicant that comes in, whoever they're talking to, this body needs to know about that. I mean, there's some policy, there's some procedural things I think that we really need to work through.
What's happened in the past is most of these people, the bank, one banker in town or another banker in town would send them in and say, you need to try for TIF, and they'd come in and I'd fill out the application form and present it to you folks and present it to the council and heard it through, and until we got Dane, well, I had to do all the notices and all that stuff. Now Dane's taken care of a lot of that. We've never really turned anybody down. In other words, I tell them if they come in on an old building, you need to go talk to the assessor. And, you know, I don't know, I don't turn any down, but we have been making up the application forms for them, helping them that way and billing the city for it. I mean, but yeah, I don't know of any I've turned down. I've helped many of them get it, but.
Well, I think there's,
Yeah,
I don't know, there
disagree.
probably needs to be some uniform and, you
Yeah.
know, some uniform structural
Yeah.
piece of how it all
I'm gonna
works.
say, for instance, with the Mesner project. I mean, they called me to call the meeting.
Yeah,
I felt kind of awkward because usually it always goes through you.
because what?
Usually it always, you're
Yeah.
the one who usually always does it, but when they're doing their own application, so I like Kyle's point.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Like Kyle's point is making kind of a standard procedure with it.
And then, you know, and then we can start entering into some other deeper water of, you know, if we get a bigger deal, Rod, that really needs another set of eyes on the actual contract. I mean, is that something that
We do that.
He said,
We refer people out of our office all the time on personal injury, on stuff like this. We've used Tom Houston down at Klein Williams, I think on the Perry project, and.
so you're not opposed to that
Absolutely
approach?
not.
yeah,
Absolutely
Rod and
not.
I talked about that.
I didn't ask to be CRA attorney. That when the council created the CRA, they said you're gonna do that. So I boned up on it. I've been to school whenever I have one. But I have no problem bringing in a legitimate expert.
Yep. Good.
Okay,
In fact, I went down and talked to Tom Houston here, I don't know, a month ago or so, about CRA stuff.
okay, and on that note, I asked Rod if Tom Houston would be willing to come give us a kind of workshop also. Just at one of our meetings.
And he'd be glad to come out and talk to you, and I'm sure he'd charge you, because that's the way Klein Williams work. They're a good law firm. They don't have to run around soliciting business. I mean, I just think you need to use somebody that's not gonna get you in trouble. I got no problem with that.
How could we get in trouble? I was wondering that when we were talking about that but-for clause. If we made a mistake and interpreted the but-for clause incorrectly,
There's no liability. You could turn down any project you want, and there's no liability. TIF is a matter of legislative grace. And you're the legislature. You can give it or you can hold it back.
So conversely, Ron, if you approve something that was maybe a borderline kind of a deal, who's the TIF police?
Anytime a redevelopment contract is signed, there's a statute that says you have 30 days after that a taxpayer would come in and object. So if you approve something that was borderline, that's on your shoulders. But there's no, once that 30 days passes, there's no problem. Nobody can go in and set that thing aside. But by the same token, if you turn it down, that's the end of it.
I'm going on time constraints here. We're going on a 2-hour meeting, so can we move on to number 10? Consider the election of a vice chair of the CRA. Dane is the one who brought this to my attention, as it is in state statute, that we need a vice chairman.
I move Kyle to be the next be our vice chair.
I move Jared.
Only
I'll
one
move
motion
Dan
at a
then.
time.
I'll second Kyle.
Kyle, do you want to accept the position?
Chess player.
Well, who, are you going off, Steve? Apparently.
Yes, he is going on.
I mean, I know when my term, my second term ends is 2020.